The next section in the book, it is the different elements that you're going to see in the proposal. And some of these you will have, and some of them you won't, and some you will have more of, and some you will have less of. So let's just run through them real quick so you'll know what kind of elements you may be preparing for your proposal. The first one says a forecasting title or subject line, and it's short. It's the brief thing, but it is so important. I have to be able to read the title or read the subject line if it's a memo and know exactly what you are sending me. If I can't make it out, I may not even give it a second look. You've got to hit that on the mark. That is the door opener right there. Then you're going to talk about background information. Sometimes this needs to be fully fleshed out, especially when you're trying to introduce something that I don't know anything about. I don't understand why you care, those kind of things. That would be in the background information. Next, you'll have a statement of problem. This is to be concise and clear. And this is where you say to the audience, I see there is a problem. It's also the place that it may be the first time your audience has even thought about the fact that there might be a problem here. So you may be convincing your audience that there is a problem, but this is an important part and it needs to be clear and concise, not long and rambling, not wordy, but very, very straightforward. Then you're going to talk about your solution. You have a problem. I've just told you what it is. Here's my solution. So that it's that kind of presentation of data. You want to make sure that you focus on the benefits because that's how you're going to persuade them. If they do not see any benefits for themselves, their organization, their company, they will not buy into your proposal. There's no reason to. So you have to have a really good focus on the benefits throughout your document. Your claims need to be honest and supportable. Again, as in the resume, there's lots of places you can be creative in how you describe something, but the thing you cannot do is lie. You will get caught. Be honest about this. And then supportable claims is where your citations come in. When you find other research or other people who also support whatever your statements you're making, then you have research to support that. Those are supportable claims. Appropriate detail for this assignment, because it's 1,500 words long, that is kind of your guideline about the level of detail. Don't give me too many words that don't contribute to it. If your word count is short and you've presented everything, go back and look for not places to add words, but places to flesh out your arguments, for places to add more information, for places to provide more detail. But if you find that your proposal is way too long, go look for those places to clean it up. Where can you lose some detail and it not hurt your proposal overall? So I want you to get in the habit of aiming for a word count, because a lot of times you will be limited to it. You will need to hit it pretty closely and not overshoot it by any unusual amount, but you need to have the appropriate level of detail to hit your word count and accomplish your task. Your document needs to be readable, of course, and that goes back to what we have worked on throughout the assignments with flow, with things following each other in logic, for things to make sense, that you introduce something first, that you talk about it second, and that you close it out third, and don't get those out of order. So it's that kind of readability. You also want to think about your audience before you even begin, so that you can use a tone in your writing. This is not a tone of voice, but the words and the style that you use in your writing, you want to use a tone that connects your readers. Because again, your goal here is to persuade. You need them to feel some connection to you. Visuals is kind of an optional thing. I am a huge fan of visuals because I use those daily in my work, and I use them as part of my rhetorical process. I use them to convince people to do things, to understand things, to follow up on things. But it's up to you. You want accessible page design. By accessible, That means that me, as the audience, or whoever the audience is, if I have a question and I want to go back and find that part of your proposal, then I will do that by looking at your section headers. I will find that business about budget. And the way I will find it is by the proper use of headers and subheaders. So that is accessible page design. Allows me to get around in your document easier if I'm your audience. And then supplements tailored for a diverse audience. Some supplements might be, you probably won't have these, but if you do, it might be, for instance, you are proposing something in your workplace that has to do with a project you're working on in the medical field. So you may have a supplement that includes definitions of terms that you use. That could be a supplement that would help with a diverse audience, because not everybody who would be reading your proposal would be knowledgeable about the terminology used in your project. So anything that helps it along could use a visual up in the content or a supplement at the end, and that's up to you to decide. But you do not want to go overboard with this, or you do not want to include something that does not add to the argument. If it doesn't add, it is taking away. The last thing you have in there is the proper citation of sources and contributors. For this assignment, you're required to do 5 citations. We'll have a video on citations specifically, and the main point here is you need to choose works that are supporting some argument or some claim you are making, not just random citations, and they need to be in proper APA format. Now, the book on page 552 gives a lovely proposal outline. You do not need every single section. You can see it's quite long. I will suggest that there may be 2 or 3 people out of the class who have the same exact sections in their document. Everybody else will adjust as needed. So these will not match up, and that is perfectly okay. It is actually what we want. You need to decide which elements you are focusing on, you are including, and you are maximizing on in your document. But we'll run through them real quick. In the introduction section, you can see there's quite a few here that will include that statement of problem, which is that brief and concise statement of what it is that you think you are proposing a fix for. You may have a short or long background. A lit review, that is a literature review, that would probably be found in a longer research project. I don't expect any of you to have that, but if you do, that's where it would go. You will talk about the need and the benefits. You will briefly, in the introduction, talk about the personnel needed for your project and their qualifications. Data sources, just a reminder that you may need to point out where your information comes from. Then there is limitations and contingencies, and I like to group them with scope, because you will be telling me what is involved in your project and what is excluded from your project. I will be looking for this specifically because it's often very important, especially when you're asking for funding, that this section be clear. All right, and that is brief. Your introduction is really quite brief. The plan is where the meat of the arguments come in. So you're going to start off with your objectives. Here's what I think I can accomplish with my proposal, and perhaps methods if that applies. Here's how I'm going to do it. I do expect to see a timetable, some sort of time constraints that need to be laid out, and this could be as brief as a couple of sentences, or it could be more complex and include a table that shows dates and accomplishments. So we'll talk more about that when we get into the specifics of the assignment. Materials and equipment. Especially if you're asking for funding, I need to know where all that money is going. Is it in your pocket, or is it to be making purchases for your project? And that will be clear in this section. Personnel, again, details about who is who, what they are doing for your project, when they come on board, those kind of things. You may talk about the facilities that are available to you to use for the project or those that you need. You will definitely talk about cost and budget. It's highly unlikely that you will choose a project that does not involve money, so you will be including a section on cost and budget. You also need to be thinking about expected results, again, because you're going to try to convince me to accept your proposal because the results are in my favor. The favor of the person granting the request or receiving the proposal. And feasibility is the last one on here, and that is just be sure that what you're proposing is logical and makes sense. Otherwise, I will discard it. For instance, if you propose that you put in your new lunchroom a gateway portal that allows employees from the West Coast to travel at lunchtime to eat lunch in your lunchroom, yeah, that is not feasible, not possible, not going to happen, and I will throw your proposal out as being ridiculous. So you need to think about feasibility, and you may even be called to prove that you can do what you say you are proposing. In the conclusion, it's going to be a brief summary of the points that you have already proposed above. Just make sure you don't repeat the wording, change your wording a bit. Don't do copy and paste here. And it will finish up with a nice, clear request for action. What is it you want the recipient of the document to do? Exactly what, exactly when, exactly how. So this needs to be clear. And then finally, you're going to end up with a works cited section. It will be very short because, again, you're only required to do 5 cited works for this assignment. And that is because the university has decided that in this class that needs to be one of the skills you come out with. And I totally agree, but you don't need to be an expert at it. You need to have a basic understanding about proper citation. So that's our goal for this, and we will focus on some, quick, straightforward efforts and how to easily accomplish completing a works cited section and provide support for your arguments throughout your document with good, proper works. Okay, that is pretty much an overview of what proposals entail, but be sure and stop in for the next video where we talk about the specifics of the upcoming assignment. Thank you, and see you next time.